it's like to have no control over your entire life? I do.
I got an 8-year-old girl. School wants us to look into it.
Are you here to take me away?
I'm here to help.
A scratch on my face.
You can tell me.
I didn't get it from a fall.
I don't care how this looks anymore, okay? We gotta do something about this.
I see things that people aren't supposed to see.
How often do you see them?
All the time.
Is it true you can see ghosts?
You have to go.
I'll start out by saying I watched the film with my flatmate, who's a gentleman of Asian European descent, and didn't think much of it in that regards. But at the end of the film, it obviously made a big difference to him that an Asian woman or actor was a main part of that. So have you had that kind of reaction much yourself from people who've seen the film?
The film hasn't come out yet here.
That's true. Yeah.
But for me as a performer and being a person of color, I hope it does make a difference. It's not often for us to see ourselves reflected in mainstream stories.
Yep.
Especially in this genre. I think the intention is to say, these are all the span of stories that we're able to tell.
Yep. I mean, he was grinning ear to ear at the end of it, and that was the reason why. Because we watched quite a bit of films together, and I was surprised. Didn't think about it that much, but so that's very cool. So tell me, the Vang brothers are the people who created this film and wrote it, and I assume they approached you. How did they present it to you originally?
I met them at a film festival many years ago, probably close to maybe 10 years ago now. And since then I became a mom. So I'm really glad that they brought this to me because I was able to, when I saw the part, they asked me to do it. I didn't have to audition, which is, an actor's dream.
That's also a plus.
To audition, but I really appreciated how willing they were to just hand the role to me. And there was such an immediate sense of trust. And
right.
Whenever I'm working with API filmmakers, there's an unspoken permission that I can fail if I want to, that the stakes aren't so high that I have to fear that I'm not doing a good job. I think there's a sense of being able to work in a very safe space. So I'm so grateful to them, and and they gave me a very intense part. And
that's true. So when you're presented with an intense part like that, what do you have to do within yourself to prepare for taking on a role like that?
Well, this one I was grieving the loss of my father during this movie. I was also a fairly new mother. I'm
right.
Not new, but enough where I understood finally what parenting really is.
Right.
And one of your biggest fears is losing your child. It's something that you go through every day. And the combination of my own personal grief, my understanding of being a new parent in the world, and my deep love for being intense and
right.
really going to dark places that I'm not allowed to go to, both in my life and as an actor. Oftentimes I'm not given such complexity sometimes. All of that was given to me in this film. So I embraced it and listened to a lot of inspiring and sad music and lived in my imagination and went through my process for this, and was, whenever you get to have a process, a creative process, deep, that's what you ask for.
Right. And what was the mood like on the set when you were recording?
Pretty chaotic, actually, because it's an indie film, and indie films don't have the kind of budget they probably should have to do what they really need to do. And so you have a lot of underpaid people working really hard, trying to fulfill, their day's tasks. And, that chaos is theirs. But it all becomes part of the film. And I think the film contains it, whether you realize it or not. On some subconscious level, you feel that. So I think overall it provides for a really ripe space for what the movie delivers, which is this very intense experience, and you get to really go, deep into Claire's clairvoyance.
Right, right, right. And speaking of Claire's clairvoyance, how do you feel about the concept of clairvoyance and that kind of thing? Does that enter into what your performance ended up being?
Yeah, so for me, the clairvoyance was a metaphor for how each of us, have strengths and weaknesses. We may not perceive it as strength at the time, but her clairvoyance is a kind of strength that she doesn't understand.
Right.
It gives her insight into herself, and she's not able to handle it. And she uses that clairvoyance as a way to tap into the connection she's afraid to face, which is the lost connection to her son. So that journey for me was really full, and it allowed for that final moment, which I won't give away to anybody. But when the big thing happens, she's able to understand it, where she couldn't have faced that event at the beginning of the film.
Right. And there are several kind of subplots and character interactions bubbling along below it. I'm wondering, like with your whoever played, you have a husband that's in the film that's kind of on and off, and there's Sophie yourself, and did those characterizations and subplots change as you made the film and as you developed kind of relationships with these actors, or did it pretty much stay as presented at the beginning of the film?
Yeah, well, every actor brings their own interpretation of what you've read on the page, and I thought Ken and Ellen and Madeline, they all, I think they all brought exactly what I expected, and then more, because when you're in this kind of a fun film,
right,
you really are allowing the imagination to just take off, right? So there's three actors, right? And we're all staring at each other, playing the intensity of these circumstances. And at the same time, we're also knowing that we're recreating the idea of, these ghosts that are plaguing us. So there's a kind of delight in that. And there's a true playing of that experience as an actor, because you are in the circumstance of the story, but then on top of it, there's a layered thing of the supernatural. So
right.
That part of it is really fun because you're all in on it.
Well, it's good to hear that it was fun.
Yeah, I think so, because you're kind of, acting should be enjoyable, but then on top of it, you're acting opposite your imagined ghosts, and you're creating the ghosts,
Sure.
So there's an added layer there of pretend that is fun.
Yeah. And the Vang brothers, they directed, obviously. What was there? Did you kind of do any research about their process and their style, and to get it ready to play the part?
Not really. We had a rehearsal. I think we had a very short rehearsal process, but my feeling with them, which is what was so liberating, was they really handed the reins over to me and allowed me to take on the role. They didn't really step in that often unless it was, unless they needed to. There wasn't, I don't think there was a kind of restriction that was given to me. I think if anything, they gave me a ton of permission.
Very good. I see The Guardian has just run a review calling it properly scary and thoughtfully constructed. So that's a nice way to start things off. Do those kind of comments and reviews make a difference to you?
Yes, because I don't normally read reviews. So I'm always a little bit, hesitant, because it's hard, you
Sure.
you lose yourself in something, and then if someone doesn't like it, it's hard to kind of go to that spot of vulnerability again. So I try to protect that part of my psyche. But someone sent it to me, and I figured it was a good one. If they're not, who's going to?
Oh, good.
But I loved their take on it, and it's what's so great is that I think the Vangs wrote something where they really thought through this situation, making
Right.
her a social worker, the creating the opportunity for how she would come into the confrontation of her clairvoyance. I think all of that is so artfully and very smartly put together
Right.
that you aren't being asked to suspend your disbelief too many times,
Yeah. And part of there are a few flashbacks to like happier days. So as an actor, do you have to set up and recreate these realities, these former realities, and because very different from the character's place in the current time. So what do you have to do that?
Yeah, I mean, if anything, I'm in a different reality all the time when I'm working. I'm really
Sure.
suspending my own reality to recreate the reality we're trying to create for the audience. So, the nice thing about those flashbacks is that you got to see Claire prior to the event.
Right.
So it's nice to be able to have that contrast, especially because she's so drowning in the experience of what's happening to her during the present timeline.
Right. So are you planning on, do you have stuff in the works that you're working on next?
Yeah, I have it's a rom-com, so very different.
Oh, cool. Very different.
There's a rom-com that's coming out soon, and I've been directing, and I have a short film that's premiering at the AFI Directing Workshop for Women, and that'll be at the DGA. So I've been really trying to create narratives for especially API, and whether it's in front of the camera or behind the camera, I've been really wanting to create that space for our community.
Do you have to think long and hard about what kind of roles you take, depending, as your career arcs in whichever way you want it to? Do you say, oh, I might as well do a rom-com because I haven't done that. I've just done this sci-fi horror thing. Is that how you approach it?
No, I don't approach it that way. I approach it with questions. What questions are compelling me? What are things that are tugging at my soul? And I know that sounds a little, maybe that sounds a little too lofty or too artsy, but I do really think about what's the conflict that I'm struggling with as a person, and what are the opportunities creatively that allow me to explore those questions. And that's when I tend to feel the most confident, because I'm really grappling with an idea, and I'm not just delivering lines on a page, or I'm not just servicing a story where my only connection to it is through the language. I do find that if I'm working on something, it allows me to bring much more depth to a part.
Now, my question is that painting behind you, is that Ralph Steadman?
No, it's not. Her name is Allison Blankley. She's a local.
Oh, very cool.
Thank you.
It does look. Do you know who Ralph Steadman is, or was he?
I don't. No.
Hunter S. Thompson had his Fear and Loathing series in the 70s with Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, and he was the illustrator that did all these wild kind of.
Oh,
very
okay.
similar to that. So I thought that's what it was. Anyway, no, never mind.
That's why I have it up. It's beautiful.
All righty. Well, thank you for talking to me. I think that covers everything, and I think it's opening here today on Shudder, so that's very exciting. So we'll get it right up there and show people.
Well, thank you. Thanks for talking about the film and supporting it.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.